The rain beat down on the glass roof of Wetherby Station, making a restless rhythm that echoed through the empty platforms. Eliza Fairchild stood by herself, with a suitcase by her side, watching cold drops chase each other down the metal columns. Her phone buzzed once, but it was just a spam email. Then it went back to being quiet. There are no new messages. Julian had said he would be there. She looked at the clock again, and with each passing minute, her nerves grew worse. Life in Yorkshire went on around her, slow and unconcerned. Couples dressed well greeted each other under umbrellas and laughed as they put their bags into shiny Land Rovers. You could smell damp stone and wood smoke in the air. Eliza felt out of place because her London clothes and city shoes were already muddy, and the hem of her coat was heavy with rain. She looked up when a beat-up Range Rover pulled into the parking lot and the engine started to rumble. A tall, broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair and the kind of easy authority that comes from years of being in charge stepped out. His eyes were sharp under his bushy brows as he looked around the platform. He stopped when he saw Eliza, as if he were thinking about what to do. He came up with his hands in the pockets of an old barber. He said, "You look a little lost," in a clipped accent with a warm but guarded voice. She smiled through the pain and shifted her weight. "My friend was supposed to meet me here. I think he's behind schedule." He looked at her closely, taking in the suitcase, the fading hope in her voice, and the rain on her cheeks. "The weather isn't going to get any better. My name is Alexander Hawthorne. My house is just down the lane. Wetherby Park. You can wait there. It's better than being cold on this platform." She thought about it for a moment, but his calm gaze calmed her down. "Eliza. Eliza Fairchild. Thanks, that's very nice of you." He put her suitcase in the trunk and took it with him. They drove through winding roads, past old hedgerows and fields where sheep were grazing. The world here seemed older and quieter. Each mile took her farther away from the noise and lights of London. Eliza looked at Alex as he drove. His hands were steady on the wheel, and he didn't say much, but he didn't miss anything. The estate came into view through the fog, with its honey-colored stone and wide lawns. The chimneys sent long streams of smoke into the gray sky. Instead of the main house, Alex parked by the stables. "I think it's best to meet the horses before you meet the staff," he joked. With a twinkle in his eye. There was a smell of hay and saddle soap in the stables. The polished wood and brushed metal shone in the lantern light. A dapple gray mare in the last stall raised her head. She was so beautiful that it was almost like she was a queen, as if she was judging everyone who came near. Alex said, "This is Skylark," and he moved slowly. "She was my wife Sarah's. She doesn't like people she doesn't know." Eliza reached out with her palm up, thinking of the slow trust of animals and the afternoons she spent at riding camps as a child. Skylark looked at her, her nostrils flaring, and then she stepped forward and pressed her soft nose against Eliza's hand, breathing steadily and warmly. Eliza smiled, and for the first time in weeks, something in her chest felt better. Alex raised his eyebrows and watched. "That's not common. She must have a crush on you." Eliza ran her fingers over the mare's cheek and felt how rough the winter coat was. "She looks great. Her eyes are smart." There was a creak in the door. Ewan McCrae, who was short and alert, walked in with a purpose. He looked at Eliza like a soldier would, then nodded at Alex. "Get off the train?" he asked. His thick Scots accent barely softened. Alex said, "Guest of the house," in a tone that made it clear he meant it. "Let's get her inside before she gets cold." Ewan nodded and kept looking. "Hello, Miss Fairchild. I'll get some towels." Eliza's heart raced as she followed Alex through the service door. She couldn't take her eyes off the locket around her neck. A tiny USB drive was hidden inside its filigree shell, and its secrets were burning against her skin. If Julian was here for that, or if he had sent her into a trap, she was already in too deep. The warm tiles and copper pans in the kitchen made her fear less strong, and the smell of baking bread helped. A happy housekeeper gave her a cup of tea and looked at the new person with interest. "Did the storm catch you, love?" Eliza said, something like that, as she held the mug to her chest to keep warm. She took off her wet coat and muddy shoes and went upstairs to a guest room that looked out over the muddy fields. The rain hit the windows so hard that it drowned out all other sounds except her heartbeat. She held the locket in her hand and rolled it between her thumb and forefinger, remembering what Rupert had said. "Don't ever trust what you see. Don't give up the key unless you have to." Her phone buzzed with a new text that said, "Unlock the USB before Michaelmas." No more waiting. She dropped it on the duvet, her heart racing. Who was looking at her now? Was Julian really here, or had she been set up from the start? There was laughter coming from the kitchen downstairs. Skylark whinnied softly in her stall, which made her feel uneasy. Eliza snuggled up under the quilt while the rain tapped nervously on the glass. She felt the weight of the estate, the secret she held, and the dangerous kindness of a man who had lost almost as much as she had. And beyond the gates, in the darkening evening, a black car sat in the lane, its driver hidden by tinted glass, waiting for the lights to go out. Morning at Wetherby Park was soft and pale, with mist curling over the lawns and hanging in the trees. Eliza woke up to the quiet and the feeling of deep country calm all around her. She listened to the quiet for a moment, the soft tap of rain still on the window and the faint whinny from the stables. She remembered how warm Skylark's breath felt on her palm and how kind Alex Hawthorne's eyes were. Then she had a sharp memory that brought her here in the first place, the USB drive she had hidden in her locket and the fact that Julian hadn't said anything to her. The manor's heart beat with a quiet order down below. Mrs. Tamsin, the housekeeper, was busy in the kitchen, and her Yorkshire accent cut through the steam. "I bet you'll want some tea and some bread. His lordship is in the library with Mr. McCrae. Go ahead, sweetheart. Just watch out for the muddy boots in the hallway." Eliza held onto her mug and nodded her thanks. Then she walked down the long sandstone hallway, her footsteps echoing off the stone and wood. The place seemed huge, with walls covered in portraits and hunting scenes that brought back memories of lives lived in luxury. There was a sadness in the air, even though the house was so grand. It felt like it had old wounds, too. Alex and Ewan McCrae were in the library, bent over account books and estate ledgers. Ewan's rough look at her lasted a beat too long. "Did you sleep well?" Alex asked, putting the books away and giving a small, tired smile. "Yes. Thanks to both of you. Eliza paused. "I want to help while I'm here, if I can. I don't like to sit around. I can help with anything that needs to be done, like cooking or keeping track of money." Ewan raised an eyebrow, but Alex nodded. "We could use some help with the books and the kitchen inventory. Tamsin has been very busy. People are on edge because the Michaelmas ball is coming up." Ewan grunted. "Come with me. This way to the pantry. Watch out for the last step." The kitchen storeroom was a mess. There were tins on top of flour sacks, half-rotted apples in baskets, and a pile of bills on the sideboard. Eliza rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She sorted and listed things, and then she put the shelves and bins back in order. The work's rhythm calmed her down and let her mind wander just enough to stay sharp. In a few hours, she had made a neat and useful order by making lists of what to keep, what to throw away, and what to reorder. Ewan watched her with his arms crossed, and his first suspicion turned into grudging respect. "Not bad, Miss Fairchild," he said. "Didn't think London hands would be very useful in a real kitchen." Almost smiling, Eliza smiled. "London teaches you how to deal with chaos. The flour sacks here don't yell at you when you lose them. At least." Tom, the young gardener, stuck his head in with a big smile on his face and a bunch of carrots in his arms. "This is the best I've ever seen the storeroom organized. I might even find the salt the next time I look." Eliza left for the stables later. Skylark was waiting, ears perked up and tail swishing, as Eliza came up with a brush she had found hanging by the door. The brush was old, the bristles were worn, and the initials SH were burned into the wood. Sarah's brush. Eliza thought for a moment, then slowly and carefully began to brush. The horse stood still, accepting, and Eliza's hand made her muscles relax and her eyes soften. Ewan stopped at the door and watched in silence. "That's Sarah's brush," he said. "She always said that Sky could read people's souls. If you keep gaining that horse's trust, more than just us will welcome you here." Eliza smiled, letting her guard down for a moment. The pain of being alone faded into something softer, almost hopeful. But the peace bubble didn't last long. Her phone buzzed in her pocket as she was going back inside. A text from an unknown number with only a few words before Michaelmas. "Unlock the USB. Or everyone finds out what really happened." She stopped in the hallway, her stomach dropping and the air feeling heavy and tight. Someone was watching her, following her. Even here. Maybe even more so here. Was it Julian? Or someone else who knew about the USB and the secrets Rupert died to keep safe? That night, dinner was quiet, with the sound of cutlery clinking and low talk about the estate in the air. Eliza tried to keep up the act by laughing at Tom's jokes and joining in when Mrs. Tamsin made fun of Ewan for being so stubborn. But the whole time, her mind was racing with questions and fear. She saw Alex looking at her from time to time, his eyes searching, weighing, and maybe even already thinking that there was more to her story than she had told. Eliza went back to her room after that. She closed the door and pressed her forehead against the cool window glass as the sun set and the lawns and stables went dark. She took the locket off her neck and turned it over in her shaking hands. The USB inside seemed to hum with danger, and the message kept playing in her head. No more waiting. She thought about what Julian was up to and if he was in over his head or playing both sides. She wondered if anyone in this old house, which had scars and quiet corners, could really help her. Or if she was more alone than ever in the end. Ewan checked the locks on the first floor. Tom worked on his drone in the attic. Alex poured himself a quiet glass of whiskey in the library, where the firelight danced on the old stone and wood. Skylark stamped and whickered in the stables, sensing the tension in the air. And somewhere on the dark, wet road, headlights flickered once and then disappeared, as if the countryside were holding its breath, waiting for the truth to come out. The wind was cold and the skies were gray and gloomy when market day began in Wetherby. Eliza woke up to the sound of stone walls and hoofbeats in the distance. The locket was still pressed against her pillow. She sat up slowly, still thinking about the message she got last night. The world was already moving outside, a sheepdog barking, a tractor making noise as it drove up the lane, and Mrs. Tamsin laughing as she called Tom from the garden. Ewan knocked on her door quickly and professionally. "You can come to the village market with us if you want. You can help Tamsin, and you'll learn how things work in Yorkshire." Eliza quickly put on some borrowed boots and an old wax jacket. She was grateful for anything that took her mind off the chaos inside her. Mrs. Tamsin was already putting baskets into the old Land Rover downstairs. Her cheeks were red from the cold. Tom was buzzing around her like a hyperactive teen, with a drone slung under one arm. He was already talking about getting some killer aerials of the village green. They drove along country roads, with wheels splashing through puddles and hedgerows shining in the morning light. The market in the village was full of life, with a lot of colors, smells, and sounds. There were too many apples, root vegetables, local cheese, and baked goods on the stalls. There was a lot of gossip going around about the upcoming Michaelmas ball and Sir Rowan Marchmont's big gesture. He paid for the new roof on St. Barnabas's church, giving more than anyone could remember in years. People talked about him all the time, half with respect and half with doubt. Eliza helped Tamsin trade with the cheese seller and get more potatoes. She felt the weight of curious eyes on her no matter where she went. "Are you the London lady at Wetherby Park?" a flower seller asked. "I think it's a little different from the city." Eliza smiled and made herself laugh. "Just a little." Tom, on the other hand, flew away with his drone, laughing and getting yelled at by the butcher for flying too close to the bacon stall. He came back, out of breath and excited, waving his phone. "Found something strange on the moor close to the old inn." "Hey." A short video played on his broken screen. "Julian." Eliza's blood ran cold. Julian, wearing a London jacket and a worn hat, is talking animatedly with a heavy-set man in a barber and sunglasses, with his back to the camera. The video was shaky, but there was no mistaking Julian's sharp profile and the way he moved his hands nervously. Tom looked at her. "You said he was your friend. Is he in trouble?" She swallowed hard and tried to keep her voice from shaking. "Julian just has a way of showing up in strange places." "Don't worry." Tom nodded, not sure what to think, but his attention was drawn away by a new notification that popped up on his screen. "Well, if he gives you any trouble, he'll take care of it. Do you want to see what else I can do with this drone?" Alex met them at the door back at the estate, with a worried look on his face. "Is everything okay in town?" Mrs. Tamsin gave him a look. "Still as loud as ever. Everyone is talking about the ball. Every other sentence has Rowan Marchmont's name in it. If he keeps spending like this, he'll be running for Parliament next." Alex's lips got tight. Marchmont never gives unless there's a headline in it. Eliza sneaked away to the stables, her heart still racing. In the paddock, she saw Skylark. Her coat was shiny, and her eyes were bright and alert. Eliza got some oats because she remembered what she had read in a dusty book in the tack room. Mustangs and any horse with a nervous stomach needed different food when it was wet. She had talked Ewan into letting her change Skylark's diet a little bit by adding more fiber and a little linseed. Now the mare nuzzled her shoulder with real affection, and every day her coat got smoother. Alex walked over with his hands in his pockets and watched them. "You're doing something right. I haven't seen her this happy since." He stopped himself. "Well, thank you." Eliza shrugged. "I always thought horses were smarter than people. Not as likely to lie to you." He laughed. "You haven't met some of the horses I know. Or some of the people who live here." They walked back to the house together, and Alex told Eliza the latest news from town. More news about Marchmont's role in the ball, hints of new money coming into the village, and a rumor that the old Moorland Inn had been rented out for a private event. Eliza listened closely, putting together a web that felt too familiar: money, secrecy, art, and old connections that had once ruined her life. Tom caught up with Alex in the kitchen as the sun went down, and they whispered about Julian. "I saw him near the inn. It seemed like he was waiting for something. Alex's eyes got smaller. We'll keep an eye out. Okay, don't go to the moor by yourself. That night, Eliza put the pantry back in order, as she always did. Every jar was labeled, every bill was added up, and every cost was cut. It felt good, safe and normal. A black SUV with London plates slowly drove past the driveway, stopping just long enough for Ewan to see it and then driving off into the night. The fields were quiet and covered in thick fog at night. Eliza lay awake, her fingers wrapped around her locket. She could feel the network getting tighter, villagers gossiping, Tom and his drone, Ewan's watchful patrols, and Julian moving in the shadows. Skylark even walked around in her stall, uneasy, as if she could feel the storm coming through the sandstone walls. By late morning, a rare patch of sunlight broke through the clouds in Yorkshire and sent golden light across the sprawling lawns of Wetherby Park. Alex Hawthorne stood at the edge of the estate's shooting field with a double-barreled shotgun across his forearm. He saw Ewan and Tom set up the clay pigeon thrower. The machine shone in the cool air, and its bright orange discs were stacked like poker chips. Eliza stopped at the edge of the field because the sight of guns made her feel uneasy again. But her curiosity pushed her on, and her boots crunched over the gravel. Have you ever used one of these? Alex asked, raising the shotgun. He spoke in a casual way, but his eyes were focused. Eliza said, not since college, and looked at the shotgun like it might bite. And only for target practice. He smiled a little, which was kind and disarming. Safety is the first rule. The second thing is to not let your nerves get the best of you. I can show you how we do things here if you're interested. She nodded, her determination mixed with worry. Ewan stood nearby with his arms crossed, as if he were judging her skills or maybe her honesty. Tom stayed close but not too close, with a drone hovering over his head and its camera whirring. Alex taught Eliza the basics, like how to stand, how to hold the gun, how to see the target, and how important it is to breathe. He said, if you're tense, you'll miss more targets. It's all about the rhythm. He nodded at Skylark, who was grazing at the edge of the field. Some people find it in the wind, and some in the quiet. Sarah used to say that she could shoot better when Sky was there. Breathed with her. Eliza took a deep breath and watched Skylark flick her tail in the sun. She let herself get into the moment and matched her breathing to the steady sound of the horse's hooves on the grass. When Alex finally gave her the shotgun, it felt less strange in her hands. Are you ready? He asked in a low voice. Pull, she said, even though she didn't feel that steady. The clay pigeon flew high in the sky. Eliza followed it and pulled the trigger. The disc broke in the air, and pieces sparkled in the sun. She stood still for a moment, then let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. Alex smiled, showing a rare sign of pride. First shot. Not bad at all. Tom yelled, which made his drone spin even higher. Ewan only grunted, but the look of approval in his eyes didn't go unnoticed. He said, at the ball, you'll give the village boys a run for their money. They kept shooting for a while, and the sound of shouts and laughter echoed across the field. Every time Eliza got nervous, she would look at Skylark and remember to breathe. This helped her worries fade away into the cool fall air. She felt like she belonged for the first time since she got to Wetherby. Tom's mood changed when he landed his drone and ran over with his phone in hand. Mr. Hawthorne, I saw something strange on the drone, he said in a low voice. At the far end of the estate, near the old gate, there is an SUV. Plates from London. It's just sitting there. Alex's face got tense. Are you sure it's not delivery? Tom shook his head. Didn't stop. Just sitting there with tinted windows. Ewan quickly set off with a brisk walk and a radio attached to his vest. I'll go take a look. I'll be able to see them if they're poachers or people who shouldn't be there. Alex spoke to Eliza in a soft but firm voice. Back to the house, you and Tom. We will know soon enough if it's nothing. But Eliza's unease grew even as they walked back along the gravel path. Skylark, who usually calmed down after a good run, was stamping and tossing her head in her paddock, with her ears pinned back and her nostrils flaring. Eliza stopped and reached out to stroke the mare's neck, feeling the tension moving through the strong muscles. It's okay, girl, she said in a low voice. Skylark's tail whipped around, and her body shook with fear. Eliza looked at the trees and thought about how animals might know things before people do. The kitchen was full of nervous energy when they got back inside. Mrs. Tamsin was busy at the stove, banging pots a little louder than usual. Tom played the drone footage for Alex again, stopping at the flash of the SUV's license plate. Tom said, I can run it online, as his fingers flew over his phone. Could get a hit. Leave that to Ewan, Alex said, but he sounded distracted and was looking out the window at the main drive. Ewan came back half an hour later, his boots dirty and his brow furrowed. They were gone when I got there. New tire tracks going south. There was no sign of trespassing, but I bet they were looking around. Alex shook his head sadly. Security stays tight until the ball is over. Come straight to me if you see anything else. He turned to Eliza and spoke more softly. We get people from the city out here to test the limits. Sometimes it's just being curious. There are times when it's something more. Eliza looked him in the eye and understood what he meant. Her mind raced. Was the SUV Julian's work, or was it a whole new threat? Was Marchmont already moving things that she couldn't see? Eliza couldn't sleep that night because the rain was pounding on the windows. She kept going over every moment on the shooting field and every look exchanged over dinner. She held on to the memory of Skylark's steady gaze and the way her breath matched the horses. It was a weak shield against the storm, but it was real and honest, and that was all she had right now. Skylark moved around in her stall in the yard, her ears twitching as the wind howled. Alex walked around the main house, checking the locks and dark corners. The old estate was getting ready for whatever was going to happen next. And outside, just out of reach of the floodlights, tire tracks shone in the mud, leading away from Wetherby Park and towards secrets that would not stay buried. The days leading up to the Michaelmas ball were full of tension, as if the whole estate was waiting for a storm that no one could see. There were a lot of things going on at Wetherby Park. People were bringing in fresh flowers for the chapel and crates of wine and champagne from London, and staff were running back and forth between the kitchen and the ballroom. But no matter where Eliza went, she always felt like someone was watching her, not just the villagers, but also something evil hiding behind the hedges and hedgerows. A fleet of luxury cars drove up the long drive on the morning of the ball, making gravel fly everywhere. Sir Rowan Marchmont was the first to get out. He was tall, tanned, and perfectly dressed, and his smile never quite reached his eyes. He posed next to the newly restored church while cameras flashed. He shook hands with the vicar and gave interviews to the local paper. He talked in big terms about Yorkshire's future, its heritage, and its charity. Every word sounded rehearsed, polished, and full of practiced kindness. Alex met him on the front steps of Wetherby Park, with his lips pressed together in a polite way. Sir Rowan. Come on in. Marchmont smiled wider, showing off his perfect teeth. Alexandra. The place looks great. You make your family proud. Alex's eyes didn't move. Wetherby Park is based on tradition. We don't sell that at auction, no matter how much it costs. Marchmont laughed and hit Alex on the arm in a fake friendly way. Of course, of course. Just here to help out, old friend. You know who I am. Eliza watched the exchange from the hallway, her skin crawling. When Marchmont's eyes moved around the room and landed on her, she felt stuck. He walked across the floor, oozing charm. You must be Miss Fairchild. I have heard a lot about our mysterious guest. Wasn't it London? Are you having fun in our little part of England? Eliza put on a tight smile. It's very pretty. People here look out for each other. Yes, he said, leaning in and lowering his voice. That's why we should always be careful about who we trust. This is an old house, but secrets spread quickly. For a moment, his eyes sharpened as he looked at her face for any sign of fear or guilt. She looked him in the eye. Some secrets are better off hidden. He laughed briefly, as if he knew what was going on. Well said. I really hope you'll come to the charity auction with me tonight. I have a knack for finding treasures. Especially ones that are one of a kind. Eliza's heart raced in her throat as Marchmont went away. Alex came up next to her and spoke in a low voice. If he bothers you, let me know. Don't be fooled by his money. He's dangerous when you cross him. The preparations kept going. By nightfall, the house was full of music and laughter. The ballroom sparkled with candlelight and the shine of velvet gowns. Skylark, freshly groomed, grazed quietly in the paddock, her silver coat shining in the moonlight. People walked through the stables, looking at the horses and talking about bloodlines and show winds. Marchmont came in with a glass in hand and a bunch of people who wanted to please him. His voice rang out. That's a nice mare, Alex. Isn't it a Skylark? She would be a great present for my daughter's birthday. Tell me how much you want. Alex's eyes got darker, and his voice got stronger. Sky is not for sale. She's family. Marchmont didn't care and shrugged. Don't get too emotional. Trade is what keeps the world going. Maybe a gift to your restoration fund? I'm sure the trustees would be very happy. Eliza, who had been listening, moved closer, her anger rising. Some things can't be bought. Least of all, trust. Marchmont turned around, surprised and, for a moment, amused. Everything has a price, my dear, he said. And then he tipped his glass to her and walked back to his fans, the room closing around him like a stage curtain. Eliza's nerves were shot as the auction began, so she slipped into the study. She walked back and forth on the carpet, the locket heavy on her collarbone. She remembered every quiet warning Rupert had ever given her, like how art and charity could be used to hide bad deals and how fake friends could be. She thought for the first time about how much of her old life had brought her to this maze of lies and danger. Alex saw her there, standing in the doorway. He's up to something. Always is, as long as there's a camera around. Eliza looked up, feeling tired. Alex, you don't owe me anything. If I've caused you trouble, he shook his head, determined. Wetherby looks out for its own. You're not alone here, no matter what you're running from. The weight got a little lighter for a while. Then, there was a loud crash from the ballroom. Tom, who was chasing a runaway drone, almost knocked over the dessert table. The chaos broke the tension, and people started to laugh. Later, when the auction was over and the guests were leaving under a blanket of stars, Marchmont stopped Eliza one last time. Miss Fairchild, we all play our parts. I hope yours doesn't end in disappointment. She looked him in the eye and didn't blink. The only thing that would disappoint me tonight is if I confuse money with honor. He smiled coldly and then vanished into the night, leaving a long shadow on the gravel. Eliza sat on the edge of her bed that night, getting ready for bed. She looked at the locket and her reflection in the glass that was covered in raindrops. She saw the mask of kindness fall off Marchmont's face, showing the threat that was hiding behind the silken charm. And as the house fell into an uneasy silence, Skylark moved around in her stall. Her ears perked up as if she were listening for danger in the dark outside. Wetherby Park was quiet and dark at night, with thick fog covering the manor and the moor. The Michaelmas ball was over, but the house was still full of memories of laughter, clinking glasses, and secrets that wouldn't stay buried. Eliza sat by her window, the locket warm against her skin. She thought about everything, the veiled threats, the knowing looks, and Marchmont's shadow getting bigger and bigger as the hours went by. Her phone rang. A message has come in. 12:00 a.m. The old grain store. If you don't bring the USB, you'll never see your passport again. Julian's phone number. She looked at the screen, her heart racing. The words were short and to the point, with no hint of the charm that had once made her trust him. The only sound was the cold voice of a man who had nothing to lose. She slipped out of her room and quietly walked through the sleeping house, stopping on the landing to listen for footsteps. The only sounds were the soft creak of old wood and the distant sound of rain. Eliza walked outside, stepping over the wet grass in the shadow of the big house. Skylark made a soft, unsure sound from far away, like it was telling her to turn back. The granary was separate from the rest of the estate. It was half swallowed by tall weeds and thyme, and its door hung crookedly on rusted hinges. Eliza held the locket tightly and thought about it. She tried to be strong and told herself that this was her only chance. She opened the door, her heart racing. Julian waited in the dark inside, holding a flashlight in one hand and his other hand deep in his coat pocket. His face looked thinner than she remembered, and his eyes were wild with fear. "You brought it?" he yelled. "What?" in a harsh voice, which was very different from the charming man she thought she knew. Eliza held the locket up. "Where's my passport?" He pointed to a worn-out briefcase on top of a pile of crates. "Give me the USB, and you'll get your passport and be free of all this." She looked at him, trying to find any sign of the old Julian, but all she saw was a scared, trapped man. "What do you want it for, Julian? Who do you work for?" His jaw shook. "It's not just me. Eliza, they're all over the place. Whitmore's dog, Marchmont, wants it. You might think you're safe here, but you're not. Give it to me." The door to the granary suddenly flew open. A tall person walked into the dim light. Julian's face turned white. "Whitmore." Julian's words stopped when the man moved forward with a gun in his hand. Eliza stopped moving, every muscle in her body telling her to run. Whitmore was a face she had seen at charity events, always behind Marchmont and always listening. Now he looked like he was going to hurt someone. Whitmore growled, "You both talk too much. Give me the USB and maybe no one will get hurt." Eliza's thoughts were racing. She stepped back and looked around for anything at all, that could help. Julian stood still, sweat on his forehead. "You promised to keep me safe," Whitmore laughed in a cold way. "Safe's for people who don't talk. Where is it?" A sudden, high-pitched whinny came from outside. It was Skylark's voice, cutting through the fog. Ewan's voice came next, booming and bouncing off the stone. "Police! Stop it right now." There was a lot of chaos. Whitmore turned and raised his weapon toward the door. Julian lunged at him in a panic. Eliza ran to the side, holding the locket tightly in her fist. The fight was quick and violent. Ewan ran in and tackled Whitmore to the ground. The gun slid across the floor. Julian tried to run, but Ewan grabbed him too and held him down with practiced strength. Eliza leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Outside, Skylark's frantic calls mixed with the sound of more footsteps. Alex, Tom, and a woman in plain clothes with a badge were all there. "Detective Chief Inspector Priya Malik, NCA," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Everyone stay where you are. You are all witnesses to a conspiracy and an attempted armed robbery." Ewan pulled Whitmore up and didn't try to hide how much he hated him. "Ma'am, we caught him in the act. And this one," he pointed to Julian, "has a lot to answer for too." Priya turned to Eliza and calmed down. "We've been keeping an eye on Marchmont and his friends for years. Your USB drive is a very important piece of evidence. We want to help you, not hurt you." Eliza's knees gave out, and she sat down hard on a crate with the locket pressed to her chest. For the first time in months, the weight seemed to lift. Finally, someone believed her. Tom rushed in, out of breath, and the drone was still buzzing. "Got it all on livestream," he said, waving his phone. "Everything, from when Whitmore pulled the gun to Ewan's rugby tackle." Priya smiled, strong and thankful. "That video could be just what we need." Outside, the estate was buzzing with activity, police cars driving up the driveway, officers spreading out across the grounds, and radios crackling. Alex caught Eliza just as she was about to go outside and gave her a quick, strong hug. His voice was rough with relief as he said, "You're safe now. It's over. Or at least it's starting to end." But Priya shook her head. "Not quite. Marchmont will land soon. We need bait, and the Michaelmas ball is the perfect place to get it. We want you to help us set a trap in public, Eliza, with everyone watching and every camera and microphone ready." Eliza looked from Alex to Ewan, then to the drone video playing on Tom's phone, and finally to the locket she was holding. She felt the past and the future spinning together, the danger, the hope, and the promise of justice. She nodded, and her fear turned into determination. "Anything it takes. Let's finish this." As the night wind howled across the moor, Skylark tossed her head, and her eyes sparkled with pride. Lights in the house shone brightly in the dark, and in the hearts of those who had stood their ground, something new flickered, something that felt a lot like hope. On the day of the Michaelmas ball, the sun shone brightly and the air was cold. The dew on the lawns glimmered in the light. Wetherby Park was buzzing with excitement by noon. The kitchen was full of trays of canapes and champagne glasses, and staff rushed through the halls with armfuls of white lilies and candelabras. After a fresh brushing, the stables outside sparkled, and Skylark stood tall in her paddock, her mane braided, catching the attention of guests who came down from the main house. The estate looked perfect from every angle, but underneath, everyone was on edge. Eliza stood in front of the long mirror in her room, her hands shaking as she put on the deep velvet blue dress that Mrs. Tamsin had given her with pride. It was a treasure from Sarah's closet. The fabric fit her like it remembered the bravery of another woman. Alex came to the door and looked at it for a little longer. "You look great," he said in a soft voice. "Sarah would have liked you to wear it." She nodded, not able to say anything. She let him take her hand, and the warmth of his grip held her steady as the world outside got louder with guests arriving and string music playing in the ballroom. In that quiet moment, they shared something that wasn't said, maybe a promise or just the strength to face danger together. Tom rushed by in a tuxedo that was too big for his small frame. He was carrying a mini drone and a bunch of cables. He called out, "We're almost ready, Mr. Hawthorne. Mic's in place. The drone is ready. Ewan and I will keep an eye on the service entrance." Priya Malik showed up in a midnight sari that blended in perfectly with the crowd. Her detective badge was hidden, but her focus was as sharp as ever. She pulled Eliza aside and spoke in a low voice. "Everything is ready. We'll be keeping an eye on things from the control room. Just keep Marchmont talking and get him close to the mic. The rest, well, we'll take care of it." Eliza nodded, her heart racing. She held the locket at her neck tightly, feeling the weight of everything that had happened that night. As the sun went down behind the hills, the ballroom sparkled with candles flickering in golden halos and guests dancing in silk and velvet. The smell of roses and old money filled the air, and laughter rose and fell as gossip spread from one person to the next. Sir Rowan Marchmont was the last to arrive. He walked into the room with his usual group and waved to the crowd. In a matter of seconds, he spotted Eliza, and his smile was as smooth as ever, charming to anyone who didn't know what was going on underneath. Dottie walked up to her with practiced ease and took her hand in a show of old-fashioned chivalry. "Miss Fairchild. You make the room brighter." She smiled, even though she didn't want to, just like he did. "Sir Rowan. You really do like a show." "Life is a show," he whispered as he led her out to the terrace, where the noise from the ballroom faded and the night closed in. "But you, my dear, are playing a much more dangerous game than you know." He leaned in, and his voice was barely more than a breath. "The key, tonight. Or your small family in Bath will learn how far I can go." Eliza's skin felt like it was on fire. She struggled to keep her voice steady. "You really think you're untouchable, don't you?" Marchmont's smile turned sour, and his eyes narrowed. "I think I always know when I've won." He didn't see the small microphone hidden in her earring that was picking up every word, or the drone that Tom had flown into the shadows of the balcony above, where its camera was blinking silently in the dark. Priya's voice crackled in Eliza's ear. "That's it. Talk to him more." The auction started again inside, with people bidding on art and promises of private dinners. Eliza did her part, moving through the crowd while always feeling the weight of the locket and Marchmont's eyes on her. Alex asked her to dance, and as they turned on the floor, he squeezed her hand to show her he was there for her. He whispered, "Almost there." As the night went on, the tension grew stronger. Skylark stood watch in the stables, his ears twitching every time an engine started or a strange voice floated through the air. Ewan, who was patrolling the grounds, called in to say that a dark SUV had arrived near the back gate. This was the same car that Tom had seen hanging around before. Priya told her team what to do. "Be careful. They'll do something soon." Marchmont suddenly trapped Eliza in the entry hall, and for the first time, he lost his cool. "I'm done being polite. Please give me the key. Or B and Noah will have to pay." Eliza looked him in the eye, and the microphone picked up everything. "You'll never touch them." "It's done." Priya and her officers rushed forward, shouting, when a door slammed. "Sir Rowan Marchmont, you are under arrest for conspiracy, blackmail, and money laundering." "What you say?" Marchmont's men tried to run away, but Ewan and the estate staff closed ranks and blocked every exit. Tom's drone flew over the scene, recording everything in real time and sending the feed straight to the NCA. Alex stood up straight next to Eliza, not moving even when Marchmont yelled threats at him. Skylark's loud call rang out through the dark yard, making Eliza's heart race. For a moment, it felt like the whole world stopped. And then it was over. Marchmont's hands were tied, and his empire fell apart as all of its secrets came to light. The guests stood there in shock, watching as the golden illusion of the ball fell apart at their feet. Eliza put her forehead on Alex's shoulder. The weight of months finally broke, and tears made it hard to see the chandeliers above. Priya came up and smiled for the first time. "He's ours. We recorded everything." "You did it, Eliza. You really did." As the last police cars left and dawn broke, Skylark nuzzled Eliza's palm with soft, bright eyes. Eliza felt safe again for the first time since London, not just for herself but for everyone she loved. The ballroom inside the manor still sparkled, but it was no longer a place for lies. Instead, it had become the place where truth and bravery finally triumphed. Rain fell on Wetherby Park like a gray curtain, hitting the windows and pounding on the slate roof long after dawn. The news of Marchmont's arrest spread like wildfire through the estate. For a few hours, the tension seemed to ease. Staff members laughed nervously in the kitchen, neighbors brought baked goods and cautious congratulations, and Alex smiled for the first time in days. But every conversation had a deeper sense of unease underneath the relief. Marchmont was in jail, but Whitmore and some of the people he worked with were still free. And the night to come would bring its own storm. As the wind howled off the moor that night, the estate's private security, with help from the police and a few trusted neighbors, got ready for the worst. Ewan was like an old officer in charge of everyone. He checked the gates and walkie-talkies twice, gave each outbuilding a post, and told the kitchen staff to keep the lights low. He quietly told Eliza as he gave her a flashlight, "We're not just guarding a house tonight. We're protecting everyone who stood up to Marchmont." Eliza nodded, put on her wax coat, and went outside. In the stables, she saw Skylark nervously pawing at the straw, her muscles shaking under her silver coat. Eliza stroked the mare's neck and whispered, "Calm down," as she checked the latch on the stall. She whispered, "I know you feel it too, girl. But you're safe. Everyone is safe tonight." Tom was in his element all over the grounds, moving between cameras, drone controllers, and makeshift control panels in the tack room. "We've got feeds on every gate," he bragged, pointing to the flickering screens. "I'll know if anyone even sneezes on the far paddock." Night came quickly, covering the land in fog and darkness. The sound of the rain hitting the windows, the wind moaning low, and the thunder rumbling over the moor all seemed to be sharper. Then, while Ewan was making his last rounds, he saw something move quickly beyond the back wall. He sent Alex a message over the radio. Movement may be possible in the old orchard. It looks like there are 3 or 4 figures. Low flashlights. Alex's voice came back, calm but firm. All teams, be ready. We lock it down if they cross the fence. Tom, get the drone going. Tamsin, make sure everyone stays inside and away from the windows. Eliza's heart raced as she watched Tom's drone fly up into the night, its infrared camera lighting up the grounds like a ghost. On the screen, dark figures moved along the edge of the trees, jumping from bush to bush with their heads down and hands covered. One person had a crowbar, and the other had a heavy duffel bag. They walked with the nervous confidence of men who are used to breaking the law, maybe Marchmont's private security, or maybe something worse. Skylark suddenly went crazy in the stall, kicking the back wall and flattening her ears. Eliza was shocked to learn that the mare had sensed them long before anyone else. She's warning us, she said, and then she ran to the barn's corner to ring the bell rope, which was an old farming tool. She pulled it with all her might, and a loud clang rang out through the wet dark, echoing across the fields. Floodlights came on, flooding the yard with bright white light. The would-be intruders froze when they saw the light. Ewan, Alex, and 2 local cops ran out of the house and yelled at them to put down their guns. One of the men tried to go back the way he came, but he slipped in the mud and crashed into the paddock gate. Skylark, who was already scared and angry, kicked the stall door and reared up. The wood broke, and the mare ran into the yard, her hooves pounding. The sudden chaos scared the intruders, and 2 of them ran toward the hedgerow while another dove behind the old stone wall for cover. Alex yelled into his radio, "Sergeant Doyle, now!" From the lane beyond, the sound of police sirens cut through the storm and got louder as armed response vehicles tore up the drive. Sergeant Bethan Doyle and her team rushed onto the estate, blocking the way out and catching the intruders who were trying to get away. Tom's drone flew over the scene and sent a live video feed to Priya Malik's command center. Eliza ran to Skylark in the middle of the yard and grabbed the mare's bridle with shaking hands. "Easy, girl, easy," she whispered, holding on with her fingers twisted into the horse's mane. They were both panting and soaked through. The adrenaline made her knees weak, but she wouldn't let go. She suddenly and strongly knew that this was her place and her fight. No more running. The police quickly caught the intruders and pinned them down in the mud. They had crowbars, knives, and a radio scanner set to police frequencies. This was a professional job, not just poaching. They didn't give any names when asked, but the clues were enough. Marchmont's influence had been bigger than anyone wanted to believe. People who worked in the house and lived nearby came together, shaking but safe. Mrs. Tamsin pushed mugs of tea into hands that were shaking. Her own face was pale but determined. Before going to the stables with Eliza, Ewan checked the locks one last time. He said in a rough voice, "You saved us all a lot of trouble," and patted her on the shoulder. "And that horse of yours? I've never seen anything like it." Alex walked in with a pale face but a sense of relief. "If you hadn't sounded the alarm, Skylark wouldn't have." Eliza shook her head and wiped the rain off her cheeks. "Now we're all in this together. And Skylark, she's not just a horse. She's family." Tom hurried in, and Priya's excited voice was on the phone. He said, out of breath, "The footage went straight to the NCA. They say it's the cleanest operation they've seen in years." Eliza and Skylark stood in the quiet yard and watched the clouds break over the moor as the storm died down and the last police car drove away. She didn't know what would happen tomorrow, but for the first time since London, she felt a strong, quiet pride. Marchmont's world was falling apart somewhere out there. But here at Wetherby, the light shone brightly and warmly against the dark, and trust held strong like stone. When the rain stopped, dawn was just a promise, a faint glow behind the low clouds over the fields in Yorkshire. The storm had left the estate muddy and damaged, but there was a strange sense of peace in the air. Eliza stood at the kitchen window with a cup of tea and watched the last police car drive down the road. Her body hurt from fear and adrenaline, but her spirit felt strangely light. She felt like the tide was finally turning for the first time since Rupert died. Alex stood next to her and was quiet for a long time. Then he smiled a little bit, as if he were tired. He said, "You should go to sleep. You've done more than enough." Eliza shook her head. "I couldn't, not yet." She looked down at her hands, which were still shaking a little, and holding the locket as if it were the only thing keeping her in this new reality. "Isn't it over yet?" He looked at the wet grass. "Not quite. But Marchmont is too proud to just go away. He will try to make a deal." He does that all the time. They didn't have to wait long. A silver Bentley came up the drive just after sunrise, splattering mud on the shiny fenders. Sir Rowan Marchmont stepped outside. This time, there was no entourage, no press, or PR smile. He looked older and tired, but his eyes still burned with the same fierce sense of entitlement. He had a sleek briefcase in his hand, maybe as a last-ditch effort to get a better deal on his legacy. Alex stood at the top of the stone steps, with Ewan and Priya Mullick on either side of him. Eliza stood close by, breathing shallowly and pressing her fingers to her locket. Tom crouched next to the porch, ready for anything with his drone. Marchmont came closer, his walk stiff but steady. Alexander, let's not act like this has to end badly. We can talk. There is no need to destroy families or reputations. I can be fair. Alex's face was made of stone. There's nothing to talk about. Wetherby doesn't sell its honor. Not now, not ever. Priya stepped forward, her badge shining. Sir Rowan Marchmont, you are under arrest for money laundering, blackmail, and conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. You can choose not to speak. Marchmont turned to her, angry. You don't know what you're getting in the way of. This is bigger than you and all of us. Ewan's voice came in, strong as rock. You're done, Marchmont. The proof is rock solid. Stop it. Marchmont lost his cool. Do you really think this is fair? It's just revenge from a small town, jealousy dressed up as the law. He turned around, looking for any ally with desperation in his eyes. But the staff stood their ground, and neighbors watched from behind curtains. Even the horses were restless in their paddocks. A loud noise made everyone look. Julian, who was pale and had wild eyes, ran out of the back of the house in a last-ditch effort to get away. Tom, who was always quick on his feet, had put a lead rope across the yard, just like they had practiced for the sheep. Julian's foot got stuck, and he fell, crashing into the mud with a strangled scream. Ewan walked over and pinned him down with ease. Not today, kid. Never again. Priya nodded, telling her team to get Julian. You'll both get your day in court. Eliza couldn't look away as it all happened, her heart racing in her throat. The locket around her neck felt lighter now. The secret inside was no longer a burden, it was a weapon of truth. She pushed it into Priya's hand. Everything you need is right here. All of the recordings, the USB, and Tom's footage link Marchmont's money to accounts in Guernsey and Malta that are not in the UK. He can't get away from this. Priya smiled and said thank you. You've done something amazing, Eliza. Without you, we could never have built this case. Alex looked at Eliza, his eyes full of pride and relief. You brought us all together. You made this place brave again. Marchmont was quiet now, with his hands cuffed behind his back and a cold, empty look in his eyes. The police took him away, and Julian followed, his suit covered in mud. The staff quietly gathered at the windows to watch the fall of a man who had held the area hostage for years with threats and money. The only sounds for a long time were the distant chirping of birds and the nervous stamping of hooves. Skylark seemed to sense the change and walked over to the gate, where he nickered softly at Eliza. She walked across the yard and stroked the mare's nose, feeling a wave of thankfulness and tiredness wash over her. Priya and her team worked quickly in the house, copying files, calling in statements, and working with the serious fraud office. Word spread quickly. Marchmont's accounts were frozen, his foundation was shut down, and the media was already picking apart every scandal. The charity's mask had come off, and everyone was watching. Later that morning, when the sun finally came out from behind the clouds, Alex called the staff to the steps. He thanked everyone for their loyalty, bravery, and faith in a soft voice. He said, Wetherby Park stands because of you. And today, we remember that you can't buy honor. Every day, you have to earn it. Eliza stood with them, finally a member of the family. Tom smiled and gave her the drone. You made all of this happen. Skylark even knew it. She never liked Marchmont's lot. Ewan hit Alex on the back with a rough but loving voice. We'll have some peace now, as long as the papers don't camp out on the lawn. Eliza looked out over the fields, which were now shining in a new light. She finally let herself believe that the danger was over. She was still alive. They all did. And somewhere, outside the estate walls, the world waited to see what courage and truth could do, even when they were up against the worst lies. Eliza had never seen days like those that followed. News vans parked along the stone walls, and every screen was full of headlines about Marchmont's charity empire. The serious fraud office came to Yorkshire with boxes and badges and went through years' worth of paperwork and digital trails. People in the village talked about the manor over tea and points at the pub. Neighbors brought casseroles and apple cakes to Wetherby Park for strength. But inside the manor, there was a strange, gentle quiet, like the eye of a storm that had finally passed. Eliza woke up with the sun every morning. Her body still thought there was danger, but her heart felt lighter. She went out to the fields with Ewan and Tom to help fix a broken fence. Her hands were blistered, but she was steady. Alex showed her how to fix a latch, how to read the clouds, and how to see trouble coming before it got to the gates. Even Mrs. Tamsin opened up to her and told her stories about old scandals and family legends while they made stews together in the warm, busy kitchen. The house was bright again, with laughter echoing up the old stairs and windows open to the September breeze. The ghosts of the past were still there, but they felt more like memories than threats. Every morning, Skylark grazed in the lower paddock. She would nick at Eliza as she came closer, her ears flicking at every sound, but they would always calm down when Eliza stroked the mare's muzzle. Eliza sat at her window the night before she gave her testimony in London and looked out over the fields lit by the moon. Her mind went over every risk and every choice again and again. The first cold night on the train platform, the locket burning her skin, Julian's betrayal, and Marchmont's mask finally coming off. She thought about how she had been able to keep going, trust Alex, and face her fears instead of running away from them. She got dressed in the morning with shaking hands, pinned her hair back, and put the now empty locket in her pocket for luck. Bea and Noah got to Wetherby Station just after the sun came up. They got off the train with big eyes and arms full of books. When they saw Eliza, they ran to her and hugged her with all their hearts, like she had only dreamed about during the worst times. "Is it really over?" Bea whispered, holding on to her. Eliza knelt down and held them both. "It's done. We're okay. And now you're home." As they got closer to the paddock, Skylark whinnied a greeting to the three of them as they walked back up the lane. Noah, who was never shy, climbed the fence and gave the mare a fresh apple. Skylark lowered her head to accept the treat and then gently nudged Noah's shoulder. This was her way of trusting him and bringing these two lost kids into the circle of her chosen family. There was a lot going on inside the house. Priya Malik called to see how things were going. Her voice was lighter now that the case was over. She said, "London is ready for you. We'll be there for you every step of the way. You helped take down one of the biggest money laundering operations in years. People will write about what you did here, Eliza." But Eliza just nodded. She knew that the real victory was quieter, a kitchen full of laughter, a table set for friends, and the promise of safety for Bea and Noah. Alex was there with her when she got into the witness box in London. His signet ring shone brightly under the lights in the courthouse. She told the truth without hesitation, her voice steady as she told the world about the money, the lies, and how Marchmont had taken advantage of trust and community. She also talked about Rupert and how love and loss had taught her about being brave. The media called her a hero, a whistleblower, and even a survivor. Eliza, on the other hand, just wanted to go home. And what was waiting for her was home. Eliza came back to Wetherby the next week, with Bea and Noah by her side, as the world moved on to the next scandal. The station was covered in a soft fall mist, and the air was full of the promise of rain. Alex stood by the gate with his arms wide open. He put the signet ring in her hand. He said softly, "For you. This place is yours if you want it." Life settled into a calm rhythm in the days that followed. The kids did well at the village school, making friends and bringing home stories. Every night, Noah brushed Skylark's hair, and she lowered her head so he could scratch her behind the ears. This was a silent blessing. Eliza worked hard to fix up the estate, working with Ewan and Tom to organize the accounts and fix the church roof for good this time, using money that was honest, open, and hard-earned. One beautiful afternoon, Alex took Eliza and the kids to the stone chapel, where the stained glass glowed in the late sun. He took her hand, put the signet ring on her finger, and smiled. "You saved us. You fit in here. Are you going to stay?" She looked at Bea, then Noah, then the fields that looked like a promise beyond the chapel windows, and finally Skylark, who was waiting in the grass beyond the stone wall. She let the moment sink in before she spoke, and her voice shook with happiness. "Yes. This is where I live now." Later, they had a picnic in the tall grass behind the house. Tom flew his drone in wide, sweeping circles over the house, taking pictures of people laughing, families, and finally finding a second chance. Eliza lay back and let her hand drift over the grass. Skylark sniffed at her palm with interest. She had nothing to hide and nothing to be afraid of for the first time in years. The future was wide and open, as clean and endless as the sky in Yorkshire. Eliza Fairchild understood that sometimes home isn't a place you find. It was in the sound of the kids' laughter and the quiet strength of the land. You have to make it a place, one brave, honest day at a time.